You're a quiet observer. You might be a silent chosen one. There's something about you that's always been different, but not in the loud, obvious kind of way. It's quieter, subtle, almost easy to overlook, except that it never quite disappears. You're the one who sits back while others talk. You're the one who notices the details no one else sees. You're the one who feels the undercurrents in a room, even when it's filled with noise. You don't chase the spotlight. You don't need to be heard to feel valid. And yet, when you speak, everything shifts. That's not an accident. That's not weakness. That's not shyness. That's the signature of a silent chosen one. And if you're still watching, still listening, still breathing with me right now, I need you to hear this. You are not invisible. You are encoded. We live in a world that celebrates the loud, the fast, the seen. A world that rewards performance, noise, external validation. But the silent chosen ones, we don't play that game. We never did. From the beginning, we saw through the noise. We sensed the falseness in the performance. We watched people chase things that didn't matter and knew deep in our bodies that something was off. And so we stayed quiet, not because we didn't know, but because we knew too much. We held back, not because we were afraid, but because we were processing everything, integrating, listening. We weren't being passive. We were being precise. And here's what almost no one understands. Silence is not absence. It's alignment. Observing is not weakness. It's wisdom. You don't need to shout to shift a room. You just need to be anchored. And when you're anchored, when your vibration is coherent, clear, and grounded, your presence becomes a frequency that recalibrates everything around it. That's the superpower of the silent chosen one. You don't dominate, you resonate. You don't control. You correct the course of energy without saying a word. You are not here to be the loudest voice, you are here to be the clearest signal.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
But here's the thing, when you carry that kind of power silently, the world doesn't always know what to do with you. People may overlook you, underestimate you, project their noise onto your stillness. They may mistake your quiet for weakness, your stillness for passivity. But what they don't see is that you are watching everything, feeling everything, tracking energy, not words, frequency, not form. You're not distracted, you're dialed in. And when the moment comes, when it's time to move, speak, act, you don't hesitate. You land. And when you do, it's undeniable. Let me ask you something that few ever reflect on. What have you been quietly carrying that the world has been too loud to receive? Sit with that. Because that's where your medicine lives. That's where your transmission is stored. In the silence. In the stillness. In the parts of you that never needed a stage, just a clear channel. And now, more than ever, your channel is needed. Not to perform, but to hold the field. You see, the silent chosen ones are not here to follow trends. We're here to anchor timelines. We're here to hold the codes of peace, clarity, and seeing, especially when the world is spinning in chaos. When others are panicking, we're observing the pattern. When others are reacting, we're reading the field. When others are trying to fix things from the outside, we're shifting energy from the inside. And that inner work, that silent attunement, that's what changes everything. But for most of us, it hasn't been an easy path. Being a silent chosen one often means you felt alone, misunderstood, invisible. Like you were watching the world move, but never really in it. Like your depth was too much and your truth too silent to be heard. You may have questioned yourself, why don't they see me? Why don't they feel what I feel? But now I want you to consider something you may have never asked before. What if your invisibility was your protection? What if you were hidden, not because you were unworthy, but because the world wasn't ready for your energy to be felt? You weren't overlooked. You were shielded. Your codes were too potent to be exposed before their time. You were being refined in silence, trained, prepared. Not for a stage, but for a moment. And that moment? It's arriving. Because the world is getting louder but emptier, noisy but lost. And now, your stillness is the medicine. Your depth is the map. Your quiet is the correction. You are not here to be seen. You are here to be felt. And when you're finally felt, when your presence lands in a space that can receive you, miracles happen. People remember things they forgot they knew. The room gets quieter, more honest, more true. You don't have to say a word. You don't have to perform. You just have to be. Because your being is the broadcast. Your energy is the sermon. Your coherence is the revolution. So what does it mean to live as a silent chosen one in a world screaming for attention? It means you stop trying to be louder and you start becoming clearer. It means you stop explaining your silence and you start embodying its wisdom. It means you stop chasing visibility and you start honoring your frequency. You trust that your energy is not meant for everyone, it's meant for those who are ready to feel truth. And truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper that changes your life. Sometimes it's a gaze that dissolves illusion. Sometimes it's a presence that makes the noise fall away. That's you. That's your gift. You are the whisper in the storm, in the calm in the chaos, the truth in the noise. And the more you own that, the more the world starts to shift, not because you forced it, but because you reminded it. Let's go deeper. Ask yourself, what do I know that I've never said out loud, but always carried in my body? That knowing, the one that doesn't have words, but is undeniable, is your origin language. It's how your soul speaks. And it's time to stop doubting it. It's time to stop waiting for someone else to validate it. You are not here to translate your truth into someone else's language. You are here to broadcast your own frequency until it becomes the new standard. And make no mistake, your silence doesn't mean you're disconnected. It means you're tuning into a different channel, one that's deeper, older, wiser, one that doesn't speak in likes or followers, but in resonance. And when you live from that channel, not to be seen, but to be true, you become a lighthouse. Not loud, just undeniably there, or unmoved, unshakable, aligned. This is your reminder you are not quiet because you have nothing to say. You are quiet because your presence says everything. You are not passive, you are precise. You are not hiding, you are holding. Holding the new frequency, holding the new standard, holding the codes of a future that has already arrived in your body, even if the world hasn't caught up yet. And now the question becomes, Will you trust your silence enough to finally let it speak through your life? The power of presence, how silent chosen ones shift reality without saying a word. There is a kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It doesn't shout. It doesn't perform. It doesn't need to be acknowledged to be felt. It just is. It permeates. It radiates. It moves through the fabric of space like a soft magnetic pulse, rearranging energy, recalibrating timelines, restoring balance. This is the power of presence. And if you've ever walked into a room and felt the atmosphere shift, not because of what you said, but simply because you entered, then you've already tasted it. That's not coincidence. That's not personality. That's presence. And when you're a silent chosen one, presence is your language. It's your currency. It's your superpower. Most people operate from noise. They fill space with words, with movement, with reactions. They think volume equals impact. But there's something deeper than volume, something more ancient than charisma, something more precise than performance. And that something is coherence. When your energy is coherent, when your inner world is aligned, uncluttered, and anchored in truth, your very being becomes a tuning fork. You don't just walk into a space, you restructure it. You don't just listen to others, you read the field. You don't just exist, you transmit. And that transmission isn't logical. It's felt. Deeply. Instantly. Irrevocably. But here's the paradox. Because your presence is so subtle, so pure, so non-performative, most people don't know how to interpret it. They might feel drawn to you without understanding why. They may feel exposed, triggered, or mesmerized in your company. Some will project onto you. Others will avoid you. Some will try to decode you. Others will try to control you. But none of that matters, because your presence is not here to be understood. It's here to be received. And only those who are ready will be able to feel the codes you carry. You didn't come here to be famous. You came here to be fluent in the language of the soul. You came here to remind people of what they forgot they knew. And you do that not by preaching, but by being. Not by convincing, but by embodying. You are a living mirror. A sacred pause in a world addicted to motion. A soft reset in a system designed to keep people asleep. You are not here to add to the noise. You are here to dismantle it silently, gracefully, unshakably. But let's get honest, holding this level of presence is not easy. It takes discipline. Not discipline to be perfect, but to be present. To stay rooted in your truth when everyone else is reacting. To stay open when the world tells you to shut down. To stay still when everyone else is spinning. To stay available to truth, even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or lonely. Because here's the truth silent chosen ones know. Most of the world is addicted to noise because they're terrified of what they'll feel in silence. But you've made peace with it. You've sat with it. You've become it. And that's why your presence is disruptive in the best way possible. Because you're not playing the game. You're not performing the role. You're not pretending. You're just here. Clearly, authentically. And in a world built on illusion, someone who is fully here becomes a revolution. Your presence says to others, you don't have to chase worthiness. You don't have to perform to be loved. You don't have to hustle to be real. Your presence is the proof. The proof that stillness is power. That authenticity is resonance. That silence is not emptiness, it's everything the mind tries to avoid. Let me ask you something that might shake you. What would happen if you stopped explaining yourself completely? Not in arrogance, not in withdrawal, but in radical trust. Trust that your presence is enough, that your energy will speak for you, that your coherence is your introduction. Would you still be here? Would you still feel safe? Would you still know your worth if no one could validate it? That's not a trick question. That's a soul scan. Because if your presence is your power, then your presence must be enough. And when you live from that place where presence is the priority, your entire life shifts. You no longer chase opportunities. You attract alignment. You no longer try to be understood. You become the frequency others calibrate to. You no longer dilute your energy to make others comfortable. You hold your vibration and let the field adjust. That's not ego. That's energetic sovereignty. That's what being a silent chosen one really means. You're not quiet because you're small. You're quiet because your vibration is louder than words. Now let's talk about the cost. Because yes, there's a cost to this kind of presence. It's not always glamorous. It's not always seen. It can be isolating. It can be misunderstood. Some people will leave you not because you did anything wrong, but because your presence reminded them of what they've abandoned in themselves. And that's okay. Your job is not to be relatable. Your job is to be real. You're not here to be digestible. You're here to be undeniable. And that means being willing to walk alone. Not forever, but long enough to become clear in your own signal. Because once your signal is clear, once your presence is rooted, others will find you. Not the masses, not the noise, but the ones who are ready. The ones who feel your frequency and remember something ancient. The ones who don't need you to explain, because they can feel the truth in your stillness. And when you find each other, something sacred happens. You don't just form relationships. You form grids. You form energetic architecture for the new earth. That's what silent chosen ones do. We don't build empires. We build fields. Fields of truth. Fields of coherence. Fields of remembrance. And as those fields expand, the old systems begin to collapse. Not through war, not through debate, but through vibrational irrelevance. Because when enough people are anchored in truth, the lies simply can't hold. They dissolve. They fade. They become background noise to the frequency of what's real. That's the revolution you're part of. Not with banners, not with slogans, but with presence. So what does this look like in your daily life? It looks like choosing stillness over reaction. It looks like listening deeper than you speak. It looks like trusting your inner yes, even when the outer world says no. It looks like honoring your energy so deeply that you no longer place it in environments that can't receive it. It looks like walking away from what resonates with your trauma, but not your truth. It looks like becoming so aligned with your essence that your life becomes a living transmission. And that transmission? It's contagious. Not in a viral way, but in a vibrational way. People feel better around you not because you fixed them, but because you reminded them of who they are. That's how change really happens. Not through force, through frequency. And your frequency, when clear, when honest, when rooted, is a weapon of mass awakening. So here's the question I'll leave you with for now. What would it feel like to be so aligned with your presence that you no longer needed to prove anything, ever again? That's not fantasy. That's your next level. That's your invitation. That's your birthright.